Oh, yeah,
All right, welcome everybody to the April 3rd Village of Flower Hill Board of Trustees meeting. Let's all rise for allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We have a pretty long agenda tonight. If anybody does want to speak, they should probably sign in on the sign-in sheet in the back of the room, unless you have a sheet. Go back there.
It's back there.
All right, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing portion of the meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right. All right, Ronnie, I'll let you start running with
Thank
this.
you. Okay, so on the agenda first is proposed local law C, amending chapter 235 wireless telecommunication facilities. This was on the agenda last month. It is an update of what was originally in our code as amended by our attorney who represented us in the Extenet lawsuit. I know it's rather long, but I'll turn it over to the board for any questions or comments.
I think the gist of this is we have been discussing this law for a few months now to update and strengthen our existing local laws regulating the siting and installation of wireless communication towers and facilities. As we all know, we won that hard-fought battle with Extenet, and we needed to strengthen our laws so that when other people apply for any type of cell phone towers, that our laws are up to date and current. So I think we've had multiple public hearings on this. I think we're ready
This is our
to.
second.
So I think we're ready to vote on this one. Does anyone from the board have any questions? Anybody from the public have any questions? That being no, I would like to make a motion to approve, is it local law C?
Yes.
Local law C of 2023.
And I would ask Mr. Mayor if there would be a secret determination that this would be an unlisted action having no significant impact on the environment.
I'll make that same motion. Do I have a second for both?
I'll second.
Excellent. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Wonderful. Local law C, oh, or abstentions, yes, local law C has been passed. The next on our agenda is local law G, amend the fee schedule for these types of applications. Same, it's for the wireless communication facilities. This is our first public hearing on it, I believe, correct, Ronnie?
Yes.
So we're not going to vote on it tonight, but I think if you really read it over, I think the increase in our fees are a reasonable amount and it's not excessive because I believe there's a cap from the
Yes, the federal
FCC.
government, the FCC imposes a cap on the fees. And this is really almost like goes hand in hand with the telecom law. And you know, I just think that they've both been vetted by, like I said, our independent counsel. And because I think they're so closely related, I feel that it could be voted on, but that's the joke law.
I would be okay with that, but you know what? Let's see. if
Because we
anybody-
got an
have a
application in
question.
tomorrow, we should have this
Right.
together.
Did we add a bond for expenses or is
Yes,
that
we
covered?
Yes. Because I do.
The $10,000 bond.
Perfect.
Just a quick question, and then numbers that, I mean, seem reasonable, but are they consistent, I'm assuming, with Muncie Park and Roslyn and Fort Washington?
I don't know that they, you know,
Like, how,
that
where do
they
these numbers come
updated.
from?
These numbers come from the FCC's,
That's their
Caps.
recommended, or that's the cap?
the caps. Yeah, we're going with the cap.
Because if we, these type of
I just wondered.
applications are pretty expensive for the village to deal with. So this is to recoup those types of costs. It's really not to be punitive, it's just to recoup the costs. We had to hire special counsel. We've had numerous public hearings. So this is really just to recoup the cost that's going to be involved in any future
$10,000
application.
bond is because on the list, application, we went negative on the amount we retained for the bond, and we were never able to recoup it.
Because I assume that if another application does come in from another company, the community will not accept it as well. We'll probably have a lot of pushback on this. So it's good to be able to bring the money in to cover our costs. Any other questions from board member? Any questions from the audience? So I'll make the motion to pass it. Jeff's going to say I have to do secret.
I would request that there to be a secret determination, the same as before, unless there's
Unless-
another significant impact.
So
Okay, just for your information, if you see in your packet, the secret resolution and the resolutions to pass it are in one, rolled together in one resolution, so we only need one vote.
So then I'll make the motion to enact.
To enact and to declare it as an unlisted action.
For local law 6 of 2023. So I'll make that motion. I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Number 3, this is a Ronnie one. This is good housekeeping. You want to
Okay,
present
oh,
it?
sure.
Yes,
Okay, this
please.
is local law F. Deals with mailing of required notices for the zoning board of appeals hearings. And in the past, we have always done return receipt requested certified mail. What happened was that many homeowners who were being noticed did not sign the cards or did not go to the post office to pick them up. So we did a little research, and the U.S. Postal Service Priority Mail with proof of delivery will actually deliver these notices into their home, and they can be tracked. The delivery can be tracked. Therefore, we have proof of mailing, and the cost is, I think, 2 cents more for the priority mail.
Right.
So we just want to put this into the code, authorizing this instead of the return receipt.
And again, primarily we're doing this to ensure that all of the residents get the information because not
It's a
everybody
better
picks up.
notification.
Not everybody picks up one of those little green cards and sign it to get the letters.
And the cost of this mailing is borne by the applicant, correct?
Yes.
It's, yeah,
2
I
cents
believe it's
No, I know.
now 3 cents more. So it's pretty negligible.
Perfect, so no impact to the taxpayer.
Now, again, I think it'll ensure everybody gets notifications where there's some people claim they never got it. So this way it'll ensure that they're getting it. So since this is such a minuscule local law, I don't want to have to hold this out for another month. So I'm fine with voting on it this month unless anybody from the board or anybody from the residents have questions. So I will make a motion. Oh, is this a combo motion too with Secra as well? Jeff, Ronnie?
Yeah.
It's a combo motion as well?
It's a
with
combo with
Secra?
a type 2 motion,
All right.
type 2 secret.
I will make that motion, local law F with the Secra provision. I'm making the motion. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Trustee Franco, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? So moved.
All right, I'm turning the ball over to Jeff to run us through our 3 landmark designation hearings.
Yes. So if I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, there are 3 matters before you tonight. 2 are actually continued, and these are referrals from the Landmarks Preservation Commission, which is an entity created under Chapter 143 of the Code. The 2 that were before you last month were Sam's Barn, which is located at 336 Washington Boulevard, and the second is the Flower Hill Cemetery. If you'll recall that I presented as to both of those on the last date. The third pertains to Elderfields Preserve. What I'd like to do is to deal with the first 2 that were before you last month so that we can perhaps complete those. I've confirmed with the village administrator that appropriate notices were mailed to all pursuant to the village code. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, as you'll recall, with respect to both Sam's Barn and the cemetery, what I submitted for the board's review and to put into the record were the decisions of the Landmarks Commission with respect to each, particularly with respect to the Sam's Barn. I noted, and the Landmarks Commission had noted in its decision, I'm sorry, pardon my back, that the structure being involved is a 17th century barn. It was subsequently the property of the Laidlaw Baptist family from 1905 until 1978. when it was donated to the Connaught Peninsula Historical Society. Photographs of the structure were also presented for the board's consideration and review. At the time of the hearing, I should mention that from the community, there were representatives who appeared, who were members of the Connaught Peninsula Historical Society, who spoke in favor of the application. I don't know if any are here tonight. I see some here tonight. And in just a moment, perhaps I'll ask if they have anything further to add. But the commission felt very strongly that this complied with the criteria of being landmarked under the code. And those criteria are set forth in chapter 143. And essentially, what the board is looking at is whether or not those structures or a site or a district have a special character or a special historical, cultural, or aesthetic interest or value. And the Landmarks Commission felt that these did, that the Sands Barn does. And they therefore made that finding. With respect to the Flower Hill Cemetery, which I also provided the decision to the board and presented a picture. I think you recall that while this is not a functioning cemetery at this time, that it is in compliance pursuant to the Landmarks Commission, something whose character and has cultural interest and historical significance. I think the discussion was that it has been in place, it is over 200 years old, and while currently inactive is something that would certainly be of a benefit to be preserved within the village. Before I see if there is anyone who wishes to be heard, I do want to mention that under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, considerations of landmarks, this is Title 6 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations 617.538. These are type 2 actions by definition. So should the board determine to go forward as to these two applications tonight and make a determination and identify them as landmarks, which is consistent with the Landmarks Commission recommendations, I would also ask that the board make a finding that they are type 2 actions. So before going further, before turning to anyone in the audience, did board members have questions?
No, but I did want to thank you once again for all the hard work you've done. I'd like to thank 2 of our 3 Landmark Commission members and Mrs. Goldman, who's not here, for the innumerable hours you guys have spent researching, having the hearings, and doing all the work. So again, thank you everybody who's been involved.
And now, if there's anyone else who wishes to comment, I guess I'll start with Sands Barn. Anybody here who wishes to say anything about Sands Barn?
We're honored to be considered.
Just give your name.
Chris Payne, President of the County Peninsula Historical Society, and Catherine Crean, Vice President.
Anyone else wishing to be heard on either application? So then at this point, I would leave it to the board's determination. As I mentioned, the Landmark Commission makes a recommendation. They're a review and referral commission. They would recommend that each of these be identified as landmarks. And I would now ask if a board member would sit to make a motion accordingly.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All in favor?
Aye.
And may I, for the purposes of the record, I had mentioned the type 2 action. Was that a part of the motion, trustee?
Yes, Bob, part of the motion.
And if I may move on to the next application?
Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you. So the next application involves the Elderfields Preserve, and I know we have with us tonight a representative from Nassau County Attorney's Office, Ms. Gerzon. Before you start speaking, if I could just make a little introduction. So this was a slightly different application because it involves, quite interestingly, a property not owned by a private resident or held by people who have since passed, but it is a property owned by the county but within the village. The Landmarks Commission held several hearings about the property, and what I would present to the board for the record would be first the decision which was made by the Landmarks Commission, and I should mention, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that based upon my discussions with the Nassau County Attorney's Office, I believe that they intend to make a presentation tonight as to the types of protections that they would propose, that they would propose to include on the preserve to make sure that it remains the way it is. I won't speak for Ms. Curzon, but I think what the county is hoping to do in lieu of landmarking is to, if you will, create a series of covenants and restrictions such that the village would be comfortable that there would be no changes to that property. It would remain as it is now, which is parkland in perpetuity, but I'll let Ms. Curzon speak to that a bit more. For the purposes of the record, and I will make additional copies for all board members, I would offer the decision that was reached by the commission, if I can provide that to the administrator. And that is the decision recommended by the commission.
This is just one copy, right?
Yes.
All right, okay, so I get the many copies for the board.
Sure.
Yeah. General package.
And the board had also considered, and I won't place all these in the record at this time, but there were a series of documents that the commission reviewed. One was the deed for the property, and I'll let Ms. Curzon speak to that a bit more. It's an extensive document. It includes not just controls between the county and the prior owner, but also includes review by the Long Island Society for the Preservation of Antiquities, I believe, which is a group that, should there be any proposed changes to any of the structures on the site, as it is now, would need to approve. Additionally, the restrictions that are in place currently would preclude various changes to the structures, alterations to the structures, modifications to the site itself, and should there be any proposed change, the additional entity, as I mentioned, there's actually three, would be a separate committee that's created under the deed that exists. The reason that
Jeff, can I interrupt quickly? Who makes that committee?
the committee was established initially at the time of the sale of the property. One of the questions that I have now is I'm not sure who sits on the committee right now. And I'm sure Ms. Curzon can either answer that or find out for us. But that's an additional entity that reviews. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the commission also took into account that this property has been the subject of a series of studies, which you'll see in the decision that I've submitted to the board, one of which was a study prepared by Edward R. Cook, which is a dendrochronological study of the Williams house, reviews the history. I'll make copies available, but the Landmark Commission took this into account, as well as taking into account a preparation that had been from Long Island Traditions, which was prepared for the county itself, and is extensive in nature and reviewed the historical nature. I don't think there's any question that one is just to drive by that it's got a historic sense to it. But it's also something that has been in existence for quite some time. The deed itself makes reference to that. And the commission, in looking through all of this, was very concerned that the property needed to be maintained in a way such that it would maintain that park-like atmosphere. And just to be clear, that's what the deed talks about, that this would be something that would be maintained as parkland. So I know that the board may have questions, but perhaps if the representative of the county could speak a bit, I think that would be helpful to the board. And as I indicated, because of the sense of the application being made, the latter two matters that came before you tonight were put over on one occasion. I would be suggesting that this be held over as well. The reason I say that is the following. What the county is going to be proposing may be a series of restrictions, covenants, conditions. These are things that would need to be reviewed. These are things that the board's going to want to consider. I'm going to want to consider review again with council. The public may want the opportunity to come in, review the decision, review the deed. All of these things will be available for review. And I think anybody who's interested in the application should have that opportunity. So that would be my suggestion. But with that, if I could perhaps turn it over to the county attorney's office.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, trustees. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Gerson, we are being recorded for transcription, so please state your name.
My name is Anna Gerson. I'm the Nassau County Deputy Attorney, and I handle all the real estate, specifically all the parkland and 77 very similar properties such as this one. We had a meeting at the site, and we had walked the site. I think since 1996, since we have been owners of this beautiful Elder Fields Preserve. You could see that we preserved it. It's to its original condition, and had a lovely art guild classes, which serves the village. So in our several conversations with Mr. Blinkoff, I suggested that instead of marking it as a landmark, that we continue as Nassau County taking care of the land, keeping it as a preserve, but I would make the deed even stronger, and I started drafting several of the covenants and restrictions that would run in perpetuity with the land, which will make the Flower Hill community feel secure that we will not alter it, we will not take it down, we will only beautify it, we will not ever sell it. And so I proposed about 7 different restrictions that Mr. Blinkoff had reviewed, and he on Friday proposed additional 7 that I'm working on in the proper wording that I will be ready to propose probably a little bit after the holiday.
Okay. So can I ask do you want to speak, or can I ask a quick question?
No, please.
Why is Nassau County so adverse to us landmarking this? Why has an attorney come to every single landmark commission meeting? You're spending time, the other gentleman spent a lot of time, and I know there's a strong resistance from the county. Why? All we're trying to do is protect it even further. So why is the county against us protecting something?
We are not against you protecting it. I looked at your landmark laws, and I felt that by landmarking in Nassau County, it would set a bad precedent, because I have 77 other homes like this that I haven't done anything to but treat them with a lot of love, respect, and keep them historic.
But isn't it maybe a good thing that we're the first, and now you'll have 76 other properties that hopefully can be protected further? I mean, I see this as a positive. The county sees it as additional work, but it should, I think everybody should want as many. And I'm very thankful that you can, and I haven't had time to review all 7 that you sent to Jeff. And can we make that a public document?
Yes.
So I can circulate it through the community, post on our website for the community to read.
What I'll do is, I'll speak with Ms. Curzon. I think what she had sent me was a working draft, so perhaps we can put that together in a format that's acceptable for everybody to review.
Because we're not going to vote on this tonight anyway, because we want to be able to think about this further and get enough public comment on it. But again, I just see it as, if it was me today, I'd love to landmark this right away. So I don't know why it's your job to convince us otherwise, but we want to protect it. We want to, exactly.
1675, it has a lot of historical significance, but I feel that it would set a bad precedent. I think it's a preserve, and all the preserves would have to be under park alienation. We would still have to go in front of the legislature, and I feel this is a very nice settlement way that I propose, which is instead of just slapping a landmark status on it, we would have a deed that's extremely restrictive. There would be no sale. I think that was one of the things that we were afraid of. Well, let's just say that the owner of this home is still alive, so that makes it a little bit different. The gentleman who conveyed it to us, Mr. Williams III, is still there, and the committee that he set up is still there. So I think by working with us, with Nassau County, and creating a deed that runs with the land will be the best way to preserve it, because he, as the owner, can come in and argue otherwise. He can take it away from us, but I think this will be the best way. And I looked, like, again, I'm going to relay back to the very restrictive deed that we have right now, and say that since 1996, we followed it to the T. And I would like to add more, and I've not said no to a single one that you requested, Mr. Blanco, correct? And the biggest one being please do not sell, which I agree to immediately.
If I may.
Please.
So, in terms of the overall plan, and certainly the hearing will go on, so whether the board landmarks or not, but in terms of the purposes, my understanding through the code and through looking at this type of property would be that there will be several things that the village board may wish to make sure remain in perpetuity. One is the park-like atmosphere. The second is that the structures won't be changed. The third is that the topography, the landscaping won't be changed. Next is that everything will be maintained. We wouldn't want things to dissipate over time and not be kept up, and the county would need to do that. But the fourth is that the board would want to consider the use. One of the differences, and again, this will be for the board to decide, the landmark provision within the code talks about the exterior. The covenants and restrictions will allow the board to consider the interior and the use of the building as well, which may be important to the board as you consider moving forward. Right now, I think I mentioned that the Art League uses the building, but having spoken to council, I think those are things that the board may wish to consider. Is right now, it's not used to the extent that there's any traffic problems that I've been made aware of. So the board would perhaps want to say, look, whether we landmark it or not, the uses need to be controlled. So I think that's something that I would suggest moving forward, that could be a part of any, whether it's agreement or order of the board.
And when you say no sale, is that for the entire property?
Yes, I said that I would encompass every single lot. I would list all of them in the, yes.
I did mention to council that we would ask for a complete updated survey identifying what constitutes this full property.
Because I believe it's multiple lots,
It is,
correct?
yes, the deed mentions different.
It's 24 through 29, and then there's some small ones too.
Right.
So,
Okay. Anything else to add?
No, just if you can give me a little bit of time to work with Mr. Blanco, because on
Certainly.
Friday I received the line items that you had just heard, and I'll just put them in legal proper language so they can be part of the document, which you can circulate.
So I'll.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
Oh.
I wanted to add one more. Do you recall we spoke about the landscaping in case there's any
Yes.
trees
So
or
I just
anything that
mentioned
we
that
would,
tonight, but.
the DPW would be taking care of all of that.
Carries your question.
Sure.
So we'll start with the board and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you. So I thank you for pointing that point out about how the controls might be different than the Landmarks Commission law may be. I think that's useful to know, for the board to know. And I guess I would just ask you, how do you think what you're proposing versus landmarking are things that you would like to avoid because of landmarking, or what you think may be better than landmarking? Could you kind of just give us point A and point B, column A and column B kind of that?
I think that we will share the Village of Flower Hill landmark preservation laws, and you will see that my covenants and restrictions are a bit more encompassing and even more restrictive than the landmark status. Would you agree with that?
I don't disagree with that. In terms of what's been proposed, just based on what's been described tonight, the reason being that what the county is proposing goes to use, goes to the interior, goes to the required maintenance, goes to incurring a cost, and the willingness to include that the village would maintain control over any possible alterations or changes. And again, that doesn't mean that the board in the end might not say, we're going to landmark. But if the question is, what's the difference? It's not just, here's the belt, here's the suspenders. There really is a difference in terms of what a covenant, a series of covenants and restrictions can do beyond the landmarking. The landmarking is more of an exterior.
I think I wanted to add is that in every single one of my 7, and then the 7 that you wanted to add, I've given the Flower Hill Board, the village, a lot of control as well. So I think that's the beauty of my way of settlement and not doing in lieu of the landmark. In addition to, again, to regurgitate, the landmark preservation only goes to alteration, repair, movement, or demolishment. And I went into great lengths to preserve this home.
So,
Yeah, the two things. One is we've talked about this committee. Do you know who's on the committee? Can you share that with us, or is that
Yes.
something you gotta get back to us on?
No, it's the heirs of the original owner.
So it's just the heirs?
It's
There's
the family.
the village or anybody outside of the heirs is
No,
not
it's
part of the committee?
No, it's
That's
the
the
heirs.
Long Island Antiquities,
No, there's
No, that's
separate.
separate. Okay.
There's a committee involved and then Society for Long Island Antiquities. And what's contemplated is that in the additional deed, with the additional restrictions, you'll be adding Flower Hill.
the Long Island, you done?
One other, we've talked about parkland and alienating parkland. Some of us are very familiar with that. Could one of you, so you agree that it is currently parkland, correct?
Yes.
That's the county, it
Yes.
agrees it's parkland, okay.
Yes.
For the public, can somebody describe what that means so they understand that process? Because I know it's an involved process. It's
Sure.
not,
I can start.
Something.
And then you can add. So alienating means conveying, selling, and in order to do that for anything that's designated as parkland within the state of New York, you have to get special legislation through the state legislature. So it can't just be done by whim or through sale. The second thing that would be controlling here, and it does now, there's already a set of deeds, a deed with covenants and restrictions in there in terms of what can be done. So whether or not they wanted to go to the state legislature to get it changed and to be allowed to sell it, they would have to work through the deed as well. So there's sort of a 2-layer issue.
And it's a lengthy process.
Yes.
Over, would you say over 2 years?
I wouldn't speculate. I think it depends on the legislature and the timeline.
And something like this, Mr. Blinken and I can work on immediately and have it ready within a month.
So I have a quick question. I've heard the community is under the belief that St. Francis Hospital is trying to acquire or use this property. Is there any truth to that? Do you have any information on what,
They have not approached me,
but,
but it is something that is going around as a rumor. That's why one of my restrictions would be the sale, restriction of sale. So.
so if we have the restriction of sale in place,
Which is going to be written by Mr. Blinko, as we discussed on Friday, that paragraph I wanted you to be happy with.
so this, if that was to happen, this property could not be sold to
Correct.
St. Francis,
Correct.
to LIJ, to Northwell, to myself if I wanted to buy it. No one could be able to buy that property. Okay.
I have a question, just to build off that. Could it still be held by the county and leased?
The restrictions we're talking about would be conveyance of any kind.
Okay,
So my thought on that would be sale in whole or part, lease, rent, tenancy, any type of arrangement that would transfer the property to be taken or used by a different tenant would have to be with the approval of the village. That's what I'm going to be speaking to the county about. And that's why I also mentioned use.
So that would preserve the current tenant, the Art Guild, so that they,
Not
in essence.
necessarily, I
No.
mean, we work
No,
together.
But
and
no,
you
preserve,
say
I
me
want to
that-
make, I want them
Oh, you
preserved.
want the Art
No,
Guild.
I'm all for the
That's
preservation
why
of,
I had asked, would you like for them to stay? That was my first question when I came in today.
I think we
Do
like
you
for them
like
to
them?
stay. I think
Yeah,
they're
we're
I think they're
happy with-
wonderful
We're very
tenants.
happy with them.
Okay, so that would preserve their tenancy of the grounds.
The idea would be if you were to go there now and look at what's there now,
Mhm.
with the exception, I think there's one residential. If that's what people wish to have remain, the drafting process would be to make sure that that's what stays there.
Okay. Any other questions from the board before I open this up to the public? Oh, yes, Darren.
Just curiosity of like, operationally, how does that county handle this? I mean, are they receiving
We
rent?
have-
Are they, I mean, and how does that all work?
We have, well, because I am alone handling all of the department and Darcy Balea and I have a management department, which is an outside service, and we collect rent on all of our permits, which are revocable at will banks. They're not, we don't create landlord-tenant law, relationships with any of our.
So they're just fees paid?
It's just a fee paid, and we have a management company, Matt Smith, a local company that helps me with all.
And has there been cases where people have bowed out of paying their fees? Has that, just curious.
I had a case
Like-
out in Old Brookville on a home, and we had asked them to leave and terminated their permit. It's a
Like,
permit.
will restrictions render something that may not be economically feasible? It's the only thing that I would want to make sure that we're clear-minded about.
They want us to do.
Because the worst thing would be is to preserve it and then it run into disrepair because it can't be used or isn't being used or so forth, so.
I can only say that based on our discussions so far that I've had with the county attorney's office, nothing that's, because we're looking to suggest that what you see now is what would stay there with the exception, as I said, I think the one residential. Numbers wise, I don't think there should be a change to the county in terms of the permits. But that's something that I will speak with the Nassau County Attorney's Office. I understand your point is that whatever the board does, you don't want to set it up for failure down the road.
Right. I think we obviously, the restrictions are important in the spirit of landmarking, but there has to be a little latitude in what they allow.
So when you say residential, that's the tenant that is having their lease not terminated. It's not you terminating the building.
Oh, no, just.
I just wanted, for the record, I just wanted, because I know the situation, I just wanted everybody to know that it's just that tenant will no longer occupy that residence.
Correct. But we're doing that in protection of the art guild, actually.
I have a question. So I know a little bit about this because I'm on the executive board of the Science Museum of Long Island, which, as you know, is on Nassau County property, and art buildings are owned by Nassau County, and they are in tremendous states of disrepair. The county has not been willing to help us really at all. What guarantees do we have that this will be a different situation and that they'll be maintained here, whereas they're not being maintained at the Science Museum?
I think that we had a history of upholding this home since 1996 in perfect repair. So I think that record speaks for itself. In terms of the science museums, why don't you come and see me?
Yeah, we'll have a
Tell me what you
conversation.
think.
We'll have a conversation sometime.
And I will get DPW, the head of DPW to help. I'm actually working.
Well, let's get what I was
gonna.
gonna, yeah,
Files are on my desk and I'm trying to
So-
work through the carousel, through the.
right. So there's two things. There's maintenance of the grounds, which we have no problem with. The grounds are handled well by the county. I'm talking about, and in this case, these buildings, which I'm also landmarks commissioner for the town of North Hempstead, so I know a little bit about landmarks. These buildings are obviously fragile, okay, because of their age. Is there funding in the capital budget for ongoing maintenance of the infrastructure of the buildings and the structural systems of the building?
So we have rent coming in under all of these permits, and then obviously it trickles down from county executive to parks of how that revenue is used to upkeep our buildings. I just wish there was a better communication.
Well, we'll talk.
We'll talk.
No, we'll talk. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
I would like to open this up to the community if they have any questions, because I think my board is done. So let's do it one at a time. Rhoda, you got a big thing to talk about?
Yes.
All right.
Just.
Name and address, please.
Come on, Rhoda, you know
Stenographer who's watching. Rhoda Becker, head of the landmark,
And your address, what number Chestnut?
160.
Thank you.
They know me by now. The question is, do you have adequate insurance to cover this?
So Nassau County is self-insured. We do not use any other private entities.
Just wanted to get that on the record.
That's it,
And
Rhoda?
I did address what would happen in case of any disaster, whether it's a storm or a fire, and we will continue to work on that paragraph.
Ms. Tung?
Thank you. Aaron Tony, 57 Hewlett. So I'm not an attorney in the world of healthcare, so you're hard, I can't do that. I'm a little confused and I need clarity, and I ask for, Mrs. Wingoff, if you could serve as an advocate for the Village of Flower Hill and explain what the advantage would be of not making this historic. I understand that Nassau County doesn't want to set a precedent, but I'm confused as to what would happen if the heir wanted to sell the property? Is there a way for that to be overturned? And this legislative process, which I've done a little bit, just Googling around to try to understand it a little bit better, doesn't mean that it could never be done. It just means that it would just take 2 years, which we went through COVID for 2 years, and it seems like, it happened like that. So I guess my question is, how can we protect the land better? Do we protect the land better by making it historic, or do we protect the land better by heading in the direction of Nassau County? And I do want to say, Mayor, thank you so much for saying what you said before, because you really said what I was thinking, and that
Thank you.
why wouldn't we make this historic? And I don't. So
Well, that's what we're here to get educated on.
Right.
Yes.
Right, so that's what I'd like to understand. What is the advantage of not making it to protect it? What protects it better? That's what I'm.
So, no, I think that's a great question, and I'm not here to advocate that it be landmarked or not landmarked. I'm the attorney to the board. I think there are two different things going on. If your question to me is, if you put every protection available, is that the most you can do? The answer is obviously yes, right? I mean, if you have a deed with covenants and restrictions and is identified as a landmark, that is an added protection. So that's just a fact. How could it be differently protected, or would it be sufficiently protected for what the village wants through deeds, through a deed with covenants and restrictions? Here's where I think a deed with covenants and restrictions is a plus for the village. The reason I think so is because, for example, where the landmark provision within the code only deals with exteriors, the covenants and restrictions could deal with the interior and the use of the property. So, when we go back to what the deputy mayor was saying, what if it's leased? What if the building's gonna look the same, but on the inside, there's going to be a business. On the inside, there's going to be, take a huge, a bowling alley, If the outside looks the same, if the outside looks the same, but the inside is a bowling alley, a doctor's office, a bowling alley and a doctor's office, the landmark provision isn't something that would necessarily stop that. The code will, I mean, your village code still says you can't have certain uses within an area. But the covenants and restrictions, I think, would add an extra layer of protection. But I don't disagree with you. If your question to me is it not another type of protection to have something landmarked? Sure it is. Sure it is. And then the county is here explaining why they would rather not do that. It's up to the board to reach a determination as to whether or not they will or won't landmark. The reason for landmarking something within the village is set forth in the code. The Landmarks Commission, when they looked at this property, felt that the criteria were all triggered. It's historic, it's got aesthetic qualities, it's got a cultural interest, it's obviously something that people wish to maintain and preserve. So those are the criteria that the Landmarks Commission looked at. That's why they referred it to the Board of Trustees. So I don't want to belabor the point. I don't disagree. It's an added layer of protection, and that's why they're before the board. The county has a position as to what they would request that the Board of Trustees do, which is to say we're willing to put in all kinds of covenants and restrictions, which I do think are helpful, but it's not my position as to whether or not the board landmarks it or not. That is an added layer of protection, there's no doubt about it. The additional portion in the landmarks provisions of the code talks about what happens if. So what happens if somebody wants to make a change? wants to make an alteration, rebuild, reconstruct, whatever it is. The covenants and restrictions will say Flower Hill has to approve that, okay? The code will also say that. The code will also say if a property is landmarked, if a site is landmarked, if a building is landmarked, before anybody gets to make a change, they have to go to the Board of Trustees. So to some extent, they're duplicative, but I go back to where I began in answering your question. They're both protections. If you remove one, it's one lesser protection. Now, I'm not going to disagree with that. Does that answer the question?
Well, what about, what prevents the heir from selling for somebody comes in with a large amount of money and wants to buy it? What protects the heir from not selling?
Well, the county owns it.
Right now, the county.
But in the deed, doesn't it say, I mean, it was deeded to the county, but the heir is still alive.
The heir is alive, but the county owns the property.
Doesn't matter.
The county owns the property. They own this property.
So is there no way that if a large amount of money went to the heir, it couldn't be reversed in any way? They couldn't take it back?
No, but it could be that they come to us and I agree and agree with them, that the both of us would then transfer it. That's possible.
If they were selling it, but the county would have to agree to sell the property.
The county would have to agree to sell the property.
That's correct.
Okay.
But what we were talking about is that this was what was discussed before. So sale, all of those things would be controlled now under the restrictions that they're talking about. Flower Hill would be involved in that process as an added protection.
But if it was historic, would that prevent it in any other way?
Not from sale.
Not from the sale? Regardless of whether it was under the covenant restrictions or historic status?
The covenants and restrictions would. The code, I will check again, does not reflect upon whether or not a property can be sold. That's the choice of the owner. So that the code would deal with. The code would deal with alterations, modifications. The covenants and restrictions would deal with sale. And as was being suggested here, this is something that I think would involve the opportunity for the board to review, for me to review, and for anybody in the public who wants to review the documents that are being considered. Because I don't disagree with you. I think that everybody here is of the mind that whatever protections could be put in place on such an important piece of history should be put in place. So that's what I think the board is considering. Would landmarking add to that, be useful to that? And that's why this hearing is going on. And I will check the code again for you on that last question, just to be sure what I was saying. I'm pretty sure, but I'll check it.
Any other questions from the public? Yes, sir.
James Crawford, 22 Mills Lane. Very simple question. Is landmarking mutually incompatible with the restrictions that
No.
incompatible? They're not mutually
They're not
exclusive?
mutually exclusive.
If I have no other questions, I will make a motion to hold this over until at least next month. We will get all the documentation. We will post it on the website. And this will give the public plenty of time to read, review, send us comments ahead of time so we can be able to answer them instead of at the meeting, before the meeting, if we have to do some research on some answers. And I'll make that motion if someone wants to second it. I'll
So just
second
for
it.
the purposes of the record, so we don't have to renotice, that would be May 1st, would be the next.
Yes.
Correct.
Can I ask that it be scanned upright instead of upside down?
Oh, is that what?
Each time the documents
I'm
come to
sorry, I
support,
wasn't aware.
it comes upside down. Thank you.
We'll make that part of the motion.
I'm
Thank
second.
you.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Gershon.
Thank you for
So
coming.
much.
Motion to close public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Claire.
Claire.
All in favor?
All right, let us start the traditional regular meeting of the board.
I was nothing regular about this meeting.
Well, we're going to be efficient.
This is the annual budget.
I will open this up first to public comment, if there is any public comment.
Is Mr. and Mrs. Lightman here?
I guess they don't want this stop sign. So actually, I want to change the order a little bit because I see Mr. O'Rourke here, and I'd like to help him get out, unless he wants to stay for the night. But I think with your two young kids, you probably want to put them to bed.
One moment, please. People who are at the table, could you please take it outside, we're having trouble hearing, thank you.
And the NCAA final starts at 40 minutes, yeah.
You don't need to stand unless you feel like standing. So if you guys remember last month, Mr. O'Rourke was here concerning his very large tree in his backyard that Brian and I did a site visit on Friday with you and your wife. And then I went back today with Ann Frankel because Brian and I had a couple of questions that we thought Ann could help us out with. And it's a beautiful tree. It's an amazing tree. If we had some scientific way to move that tree, it would be great for the community. Unfortunately, that tree is really close to the house. And I get it. It's a safety issue. I get it. It's an issue for your septic system. It's going to be an issue possibly for the house. If the way those tree roots are growing, they could possibly damage your foundation. The village likes to protect trees. That's like the biggest thing for the village here, one of the biggest things. And I think after talking with your family, Brian, and with the village arborist, we came to a, I think, fair solution where we will give you the permit to remove the tree in the backyard. You're going to replace that tree with minimum 3-inch diameter trees in the front yard. At least one will be deciduous. If the O'Rourkes want to have a spruce or similar tree, then that's okay. So we'll at least have one deciduous tree. But if they want to do 2 deciduous trees, that's wonderful. Because of the trees they have in the front yard right now, having 4 trees in the front yard is just not going to work. So we would, once you apply, we would grant you permission to remove the 2 crepe myrtles that are currently there and replace one of those trees with a smaller deciduous tree, either in the front yard or the backyard. And then for the record, for people who haven't been there, there's too many wires on that property. There's wires in the power line wires in the back of the property, so you really can't plant trees back there. There's a line that goes from the backyard to their house, which negates planting trees like in the side of the backyard. And then also on the property between them and their neighbor, there's another set of power lines. So looking at places to plant trees, it's really difficult because anything we plant today in the long term will cause problems with power lines. So being conscientious of all it says geography or geometry. We were arguing which words we should use.
It's actually both in this situation.
So your wife was right and then you were right. So it's the geometry and the
Your
geography.
wife is always right, remember that. You're a young guy, trust
So
me.
the geometry and the geography of the property and the trees, we're in essence having 3 come down with 3 replacements. And I think it works best and I think it's fair. And I don't know if anyone from the board has any questions on this.
No, it's
And I want
So-
to thank the deputy mayor for spending a good hour there on Friday.
So the species being removed are maple?
2 crepe myrtles in the front and the tree in the backyard is
Oh, it's a walnut
It's definitely not walnut. I'm sorry.
or black, maybe, I have,
I don't think it's the black walnut.
no, not black walnut, it's a hickory.
I believe it's a hickory.
It's got the big green tennis balls in the middle of the summer comes down from it, no?
Well, they haven't been in the
No.
property long enough to know.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
They haven't, they purchased the house, but they haven't moved in yet. They're doing some renovations.
All right, of that type. And then what's being proposed to come in?
At least 1 deciduous tree that we agree on with Ann. They're gonna pick some stuff out. And 1 might be a spruce, since Kevin thought a spruce would look nice. But if it doesn't work out, then it could be a 2nd deciduous tree. But it will be at least a 3-inch diameter tree to give it a little more growth possibility.
And is anything happening on the street side then or not? Is
Sorry.
anything happening on the street side in terms of replanting?
with a spruce, right, you're talking in the front, so not up against the street, but you're trying to figure out the location, but yes, some of the trees are going.
2 in the front and 1 will either be in the side.
Right, no, with the idea that we're pushing to put street trees back in, is this an opportunity or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We're trying to maintain sightlines with the street and the traffic, but one of the trees we did discuss the whole idea of the beautiful canopy.
Right.
Trees, so one will definitely meet that need, possibly 2, depending on if the spruce becomes a Christmas tree by the house or becomes a deciduous tree towards the front. So yes.
Great.
Any other
Good
questions?
job, guys.
We have to make a resolution.
I would like to at least have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion to grant Mr. O'Rourke an appeal on his tree removal denial for his home at 69, tree removal at 69 Mason in the rear yard.
And this, the conditions is explained and set forth in the minute.
Correct. And the applicant will also send in a second application for the removal of the 2 crepe myrtles in the front, because that wasn't part of this application.
Okay, so.
I'll
who made that
second.
motion?
I'll second
Okay, and trustee Denise and Mayor seconds, all in favor?
Max will abstain.
Max abstain, any other
I'll
abstains?
vote aye.
Okay, so moved.
See, worked.
Okay, I'm ready to say thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Appreciate it. Welcome to the community.
Did we vote?
She said his meeting.
Oh, I didn't hear everybody say aye. Oh, okay.
See, the wheels of government work pretty quickly.
I
these
think
days.
so. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yay. Kevin, could you still call me once in a while?
Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Anything? No? Okay. Just
Yes.
checking.
I want to thank this board for taking its action tonight on the Sands Barn and on the cemetery and preserving our local history.
You're welcome, Mr. Schwartz.
We appreciate that.
Okay, next order of business is the annual village organizational meeting. And you all have copies and it's also available on the website, the annual organizational resolutions. So I know you've all read this well in advance. So,
Gary asked that you read every single word into the record. Right, Gary?
you know what, why don't you just replay
Putting
the
words
tape?
in my mouth, that's not fair.
On the
We
record,
can
too.
replay the tape from this. We'll look at having some changes to the policies, there been some updates. So, somebody like to offer a resolution?
I will, actually, the paper that everyone has is missing one of my appointments.
No, that, we're not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is just like bank accounts.
Oh, I'm
meeting
jumping
is-
ahead to the whole thing.
newspapers, who can make deposits, who can write checks. That one.
I'll make the motion.
And a second,
I will second it.
thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now are the appointments.
Do we have to approve the policy separately, or that's part of that
So
first?
it's part of the annual
Okay, good.
meeting resolution.
So there is one appointment that didn't make this, so I will announce the appointment because it's not in the document, correct?
Correct.
So the Board of Ethics, I am going to appoint Linda Schwartz as the other member. I'd like to thank anyone else on a board that is no longer part of the board. I'd like to thank them for their service.
Okay, I'm going to ask for approval of the mayor's appointments. Would somebody like to offer the resolution to approve?
I'll make the motion.
That's Deputy Mayor. Second, please. Trustee Janice, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Placements.
So can we actually separate Anne Frankel out from the rest of the appointments and vote on that separately so that
Well,
Max?
I'll write it that Max Frankel votes in favor and abstains on the August appointment.
Great, thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Budget.
Okay. like to thank the Budget Committee for their time. I'd like to thank the trustees for coming to last week's budget meeting. Let me just pull up something on my form because I have a printout here. All right, most importantly, not the cover sheet, but page 2. That's a new document that I didn't have. It's in the PowerPoint. That one. Okay. This looks kind of similar to our budget balance sheet that we used in the past, but I decided to make it a little simpler and use a little less, make it a little less of an eye chart. So if we look at our budget this year, we're looking at a total budget of about $4 million. Less fire expense, we're getting to total appropriations of $3.194 million. Less the almost $2 million in revenue gets us to our balance to be raised by taxes. If you take that number, that 1.198 million, you add back in the fire expense, and we get to our total tax collected of about $2 million. So our budget, interesting when you look at the analysis of it. So our fire expense has gone up a lot. That has to do with a small increase from Port Washington Fire. Manhasset, we do not pay the taxes to the village. That goes, I think, through the Manhasset residents. It goes through their town bill, I believe. But if we look at and you don't have all the information here, but the big expense increases from the Roslyn Fire Department. Not only did they increase their budget 6% against my request not to, they started with 7, they went down to 6. They have changed with the reassessment of all of our taxes. The county, being wise people, decided to phase this in over a 5-year plan. The fire department decided to do all the reassessments from day one. So half the villages it works great for because theirs goes down, and the other half it goes up. Unfortunately, we're on the wrong side of the stick there. So we disagreed with it, and actually Flower Hill has yet to sign the contract with the fire department. We're paying our bills, but I'm not signing it until we try to get some resolution. Jeff Blinkoff is dealing with the fire department's attorney, and we'll see where we get. But the fire department at least will be getting their funds, but I'm paying it in protest in order to protect our Roslyn residents' taxes. If we look at the budget, we're actually spending a little less than last year. So actually our budget, we're spending 6.2% less. Our appropriations are down a little less. Our revenue is down. And again, when you start looking through some of the analysis, our revenue is down. A lot of it is predicted from building permits. We just don't know where it's going to be this coming year. This year, ending 23, we'll just be behind our expected revenue. But we just had a bunch of last second permit applications recently. So if that didn't happen, that would be of some concern. And I just can't predict the future with the rising interest rates and the recession, potential recession, the way the economy is. So I don't know if we're immune to building or non-building. So I try to be a little more conservative in our revenue expectations. And it boils down to actually just a very small 1.5% total tax collected increase. But most of that has to do with the fire tax. Actually, once you bump out the fire tax, it's like you're paying less. If we look at the categories, so you'll have the presentation here. The big thing to note in our revenue that's down significantly, that's state aid. So actually it's down from last year to this year, 48%. But state aid includes the ARPA recovery fees. Recovery fund. Aid, thank you. So because we don't have the ARPA funds, that's what really knocked down a lot of our revenue for this year. But we still have a lot of the funds saved in reserve. We're going to be using those funds on various projects over the next year or two. So that gets us down to $4 million total budget. Again, small little things. The good thing is our fines and forfeitures are up because now that court's back in action, we're actually bringing in more money than we have in the past. Use of money and property is up, and that a lot of it has to do with our reappropriation of some of our funds to my class, and I forgot to give you this one, Joe, because you had a question on that. So interest rates are going up, and then through a state-approved program, we can get even slightly better interest rates. So that's why our interest is going up, and we can make that 68% increase. Before I go to expenses, does anyone have any questions on the revenue side? Excellent. I go to expenses. So, like everything, costs are going up on everything. Is there a question, Ben?
No, just.
I thought for out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, Steve, what's your question? I just saw your hand doing it. You know, with inflation, prices of everything is going up. I'd like to thank the staff for doing an excellent job with trying to keep expenditures down, trying to do more with less. Like specifically Rich in the Highway Department, they're doing a lot of the vehicle maintenance themselves. So instead of sending it out where it's going to cost us significantly more, it's just costing us parts. In essence, our labor is free at that point. So we're doing a lot of our maintenance in-house. We're just trying to do more with less. And we're going to spend a little less money this year than in the past because there's some things we don't need to spend money on. We're trying to be a little more aggressive. The big number difference here that you'll see in the expense by category is the staff/clerk contractual. That's down 30%. But the big hit for that is really this current year that's just about to end. We're spending a lot of money on the scanning project. That's
And then the software.
and the software. So with the scanning and software project coming to an end, that's why we have a significant cut in spending in that category. Other items that we are spending a little less on, highway. And highway this year, we're working on our road resurfacing project, and we'll get to that with Steve and Rich shortly. But what we've decided to do is spend a little bit less this year, mostly through using our CHIPS funds, but we're going to try to save our funds for a big project next year. Because if you look at our road work pavement rating chart, you will see a very long red line on Stonytown Road. Stonytown is starting to show a lot of its age. When was the last time it was paved?
Over 15, maybe 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
when I first moved here, it was, that's 20,
Yeah.
I mean, 21 years.
And I believe, Steve, that inch and a half only?
Only inch and a half. Yes.
Where traditionally we would do on a road like that's heavily traveled, we would do 2 inch.
Amazing that you got 15 years out of an inch and a half.
It is actually.
That's unbelievable.
Thank Rich, he babies the road with the plow.
We must have took it over right when, we must have repaved it, right as we took it over from the county.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laser practice.
Right.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago, roughly, almost 20.
Right. So we're lucky that this year it didn't snow as much. We had almost no snow. If we had a big snow year, we might have had 2 Stonytown this year. So we're saving the dollars from this year to do a big project next year. And any residual monies that are left over, we can look at any other roads that will fit in the budget. And I'd like to thank you again, Steve, for coming up with a future cost of what we think the road will cost next year. So I think we're looking good financially for our roads.
I just
Yes,
want
ma'am.
to publicly thank former Senator Phillips for our $125,000 transportation grant that will also go to the roads.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have that note here again, but I had it before. No, thank you for reminding me. Yes. It's funny, we're finally spending a grant that we were given, how many years ago would that be?
Well, 2 senators now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's good we're finally getting the monies now. And thank you, Albany, for working so quickly. I think I'm being facetious here. Another decrease that's a little significant is code enforcement. We're utilizing our new code enforcement officer differently than our past code enforcement officer. We'll still have adequate coverage on weekends and during the days, but we're just going to save some money by deploying different hours. And I think that's it. Oh, most importantly, we're going to do the transfer to other funds. I'm going to suggest, or I'm proposing here, we put another $50,000 in our truck capital reserve fund, and then we put another $50,000 in our general reserve fund as an explanation of what we've done. So if you want to jump over the capital equipment chart. we have some equipment that prematurely, that is no longer operational, even though it's way past its lifetime. So what we're doing is, we've already ordered and we're going to be receiving our new ride-on mower this week. We'll probably get the trailer in another week or two. So if you remember from last year, the plan was to replace one of our really old pickup trucks this year or early next year. But we need to spend the money on the expensive mower, which is how much?
12,000? 12,500?
Plus the trailer, that's another 2,500. That's about $15,000. And then we are trying, and it looks like it might take us a couple of months at this rate, to get a new utility cart. The current utility cart we have just had a nice hydraulic failure, which thank you, Rich, for fixing. So that cart was bought in 2007, and it's way past its lifespan. So we're hoping to have that a little longer and replace it following year, but it looks like we're going to replace it this year, use some of our truck reserve funds. We're putting another 50 in so that next year we will have enough funds to replace the pickup truck, which could cost up to $80,000 for F-250 with the plow and all the other attachments. So I think we're doing some wise saving. We already put $50,000 in our regular capital reserve fund, which we can use for road work, we can use for other vehicles. So if next year we need it for the roads, we'll have $100,000 there. If not, we will have money in place for the other equipment that eventually we need to replace. Most likely one of the dump trucks. Rich did some work on it this year, so it's getting old. That not the biggest truck, but our second biggest truck. That's going to probably be need to replace sooner than later. And then possibly the payloader, which we acquired in 2001, and it's still running strong, but with something that's 23 years old almost, it'll be time to possibly replace it. So again, I think we're doing some very fiscally conservative planning for the future, so we don't have to use up all of our reserves. We don't have to go to bond or start being stressed for bringing in to pay for equipment that they're way past its lifetime. So we've got that. Does anyone have any questions on the expense portion of our presentation? That's great.
Well, can I just make a general comment?
General comments are always welcome as well.
All right, I just wanted to say, like, seventh or eighth budget that I've been a part of, and I think the staff, the mayor, the board continue to find ways to be more efficient with dollars. And I think at the end of the day, that's why we're continuing to hold down costs, and use our dollars more effectively and do more longer term planning. So, thank you to the mayor, the board, and especially the staff. The example you just used of Rich and the team doing the work on the truck as opposed to sending it out. Things like that, where we're better using our resources and more effectively using our dollars. I think we're doing right by the residents here. So great job, everybody.
No, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this lovely budget process. I think I had one other thing to talk about in the budget, but I don't remember what it is, so I won't say it. Do I need to make a motion?
Yes,
for
we
the
need a
board?
resolution adopting
Yep.
the 23-24 budget.
I guess I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Wonderful. That was easy.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, now comes the regular meeting. So we have approval of, we have two meetings, the meeting of March 6th, that was our regular meeting. And then we had a special meeting to present the budget on March 27th. So we need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, then you were at all the meetings,
Yes.
both meetings, okay, perfect. Okay, so second by trustee Franco, who attends both meetings, all in favor? Those who attended.
Aye.
Doesn't matter, you don't need to attend it.
It was not at the March 27th.
Right, okay, thank you. Next is the treasurer's report. We all have the claims. Anybody have any questions?
So as I say every month, I sign off on every single, I review and sign every single claim as well as the village administrator. So we've got, and Suzanne does, so we've got 3 sets of eyes on everything. So as always, everything is appropriate expenses for our lovely village. So I will make a motion to accept the abstract as presented.
Do I hear a second? Extension on the landscaping.
I'll second.
Second, okay, all in favor? Okay, Peter, the architectural review committee.
Sure. So this was the Architecture Review Committee, March 27th. We had 5 applications. One, we had a returning application, which is for a 2-car garage with 30 bottom heights. They modified their original design. We had some comments sort of harking back to the original design. We wanted some elements included that were in the first design. From the zoning board, 85 Drake, they were doing pool patio. And it was in zoning for the fence, which is a corner lot in the front yard. The comments there had to do with grading to be reviewed by me to make sure that it was contained on the property. I have gotten some preliminaries on that from the landscape architect, and that also was also looked at recently by the arborist Anne Frankel, and she approved that design. 3 new applications. 101 ready, first and second floor additions, and an exterior, I'll call it exterior facelift on that. That was approved as it was submitted. We had signs for 1040 Northern Boulevard. This is for the
1045.
1045. Sorry. This is for the second floor, which is New U Plastic Surgery. They have the entire second floor. Their signs we went through. They had a sign on the front. Again, on the second floor, sign on the side, on the second floor as you turn the corner, and a sign over their canopy, which their entrance is in the rear, stairs and elevator in the back. Of all the signs there, it's a black and white sign. The panels on the building are black. I have things if you wanted to see it. Black with very thin lit white letters. They did ask for a sign on the west side, which faced Lamani, which we said they could not do, but you thought it was superfluous really where that was. So that was approved. That's the 4th tenant in that building. So you have Madison Reed, Provident Bank, you have Nail Place in the back, and then the second floor is this new plastic surgery.
So that building is now full, correct?
It's full now, yes. The last application was for a new dwelling at 124 Wood Hill. We had, a couple minor comments in the front portico and some detailing. So subject to that, we approved it with those conditions for your approval here tonight.
So for 1045, I'd like to thank you for sharing the pictures with me. I'd like to thank the ARC for their careful consideration on restricting too much signage. And I'd also like to thank them for ensuring that the signage that's going to be facing the homes in the back of the lot, in essence, won't be obtrusive so that anyone living behind is going to be seeing the signage. It's low enough with the topography that the people behind won't see a sign versus it being a high sign in the back of the yard. So thank you, Gary, Peter, and the rest of the board for dotting the i's and crossing the t's on that. And I think the sign is a nice design.
Okay, somebody would like to offer a motion to approve the findings of the architectural review committee?
I'll make a motion.
Can I hear a second?
I'll second.
And I know that Mr. Lewandowski is abstaining. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. Engineer and Public Works. I know that we already went through the road condition map. Anything else?
I just have a question, Steve.
Sure.
Why is Middle Neck Road that was just done only good? Why is it blue?
Why is it blue?
It's blue. It probably should be green.
Shouldn't it be green? Or it's just done?
There's already starting to.
Really?
Yes. Right by
I
the-
rode my bike out there. I mean, it's pretty nice. I mean, except the manhole.
The manhole, that's, yeah.
That's why you
I
see it's
think
orange.
we should actually address that.
Those they have to be lifted because they're. Oh, so it is blue. Okay.
Can I ask a question? If
Yeah.
there's a street and a portion of it is red and a portion of it is not red, does that mean the whole street gets repaved or just a portion that's red?
So only the portion in front of your house doesn't
Right.
get paved. We leave that portion to
You
be
know I am asking,
extra
but-
crunchy. So,
We love crunch, but
so
as
actually,
long as it's all crunch.
so if you do look at our lovely color-coded scorecard, I believe, I'll let Steve talk. I don't want to say I believe.
The board
Like,
has
if it's
to decide.
different.
Well, he's gonna make a proposal to us on what the proposal is.
So what it's basically telling you is that a portion of the road is deteriorating much at a greater rate than other portions. Now, in the past, we've done portions of it, or we've done the entire road. I guess we're leaning this year to doing more portions that are bad, rather than paving an entire section, which again has its plus and minuses.
Right.
Because you have new sections of road versus old sections of road.
So
You have a cold joint there.
So that being said, is our proposed roadworks plan for 23-24?
So we're looking to do Ridge Drive East and Chestnut.
So when you say Ridge Drive East, it's just the portion from Woodland up to,
The Spruce.
Mhm.
There's
Which is-
actually two sections on Ridge Drive East. It sounds like we just want to do the one from Spruce down to Woodland.
right. And for anyone, I'll say Frank, who's ridden his bike on
First
it.
Bruce to where?
On
Spruce down to
Ridge Drive.
And then Chestnut.
That's so terrible.
It's beat up.
Yeah, but it's,
It's not, I mean, it's unfortunately heavily trafficked because people who work and go to the hospital use that as a shortcut. So, and also it's going uphill, and as we learned from Rich, things on hills get chewed up a lot more than things not on hills. So that piece of road kind of needs a nice replacement. So we're looking to do it from Woodland up to Spruce, which will take a red section and make it green. And the other road is from where to where?
Chestnut is going from, what is that?
Hemlock.
What about Oakland Hook?
Rennie.
Rennie, yeah, Rennie.
All the way to.
It's probably Rennie to Hemlock, I have to guess.
Yeah, it's Hemlock.
If we're going to the end.
I thought was it going to go to the blue section, or we're gonna leave?
No, we're leaving the blue.
But we're gonna-
Red-
so
only
it's-
the red section.
So it's really not from Rennie to Hemlock, it's Hemlock up to somewhere between Rennie and Port Boulevard, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm confused.
You have to
So is it red and yellow or just red?
There's a yellow,
Yeah, orange.
Circle it, please.
We're going from,
Right here. Here's Rennie, here's Hemlock.
yeah, so we're not going down to here. We're going in this area.
All the way to the blue.
Blue to the gutter, basically,
Yes.
or before the gutter.
So,
Okay.
Right.
so east and west of Rennie.
We're doing the red.
Yes.
We did drive on the road and it's not in the best shape.
That makes more sense.
And we did get a complaint from a scooter driving child.
And
Started to say.
we'll look at it if we have to, go a little further.
There's also gutters that gotta be replaced there as well.
Yes.
And that adds to some of the cost. And we're gonna bid out a third road, correct? Possibly
Probably
depending on
put-
where we
Yeah,
are.
we'll probably put a third road in as one of those alternate type deals where if we have a little extra and the other ones come in less, we can throw that in.
Right.
What road would that be? Where am I at?
Birchdale's pretty crappy.
The problem with Birchdale is it has some drainage on it that we'd like to do,
Oh,
which
right,
brings
right.
it up.
And you got a lot of you got a couple of construction.
And Birchdale is set for National Grid to upgrade their pipes, so we're hoping next year to get a deal or something.
So we're gonna wait for National
Yeah,
Grid
Birchdale
to
and
do
Country
it.
Club both.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then we
Yeah.
could
See if
maybe
squeeze
split
that.
costs.
We'll get
Yeah.
half done.
But it'd be the
Yeah.
worst thing is if we do Birchdale,
Yeah,
and
then
they
they
were
rip
to
it
rip it up, and
They'll do
then,
that the day we finish.
right.
Sorry, I just, so National Grid is looking at doing Birchdale and Country Club, you said?
Next year. Portion
Next year, okay.
Yes.
So I think we'll
By
spend
the
our
time you
dollars.
finish the gas.
when-
Yeah, yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna
I
be able
just-
to use gas.
yeah.
I mean,
Over the
right?
top, I couldn't hear which one.
Get rid of it.
So that's the
Before they outlaw
proposed.
gas.
They say Flower Hill's about 90% gas. All the pipes are almost all updated. So they're pretty much almost
It's all
done.
plastic.
Yeah, it's all plastic.
Yeah, no, they did it in front of my house.
No more splitting.
Right.
So while we're on this, resolution to authorize, our engineer to prepare contract documents for the 23-24 road work and drainage project.
I'll make the motion.
Because the schedule for this is Steve will work on the,
So we're basically trying to get this out to bid by the first week in May. This way we have a 2-week-long bid process and hopefully approve this for the June meeting and get started right after school is done.
because the goal is to try to do the work over the summer when there's less disruption for the school buses and not have to deal with some of the work which we've done in the past. Things get dragged out until September, where now we have school bus problems, which we just had this year with Fernwood, and I want to make sure we don't have that problem again. So that's what I try to,
To approve,
I made the motion.
by trustee Janice, need a second?
oh, I'll second. Oh, no, Claire will second.
Oh, because it's good.
Because she looks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, okay.
Fight for constituency.
Rich, you had stuff to tell us, right?
Yeah, the street signs.
Yes.
So we basically I just purchased the last of the 70-something street signs that we needed, since they're outdated. So we pretty much are gonna, now they're all gonna be up to code. Basically, you have to have high intensity prismatic, street signs now. It's been like that for a little bit, so, once those come in, we're gonna start replacing all of them. After we're done with the street signs, then we'll move on to more of the cautionary ones, stop signs, the driveway ones, all those that we have to change, and the reflector ones that go on the stop signs as well.
Right. So instead of doing everything in one shot, we're gonna do everything in a metered way, just to make it easier on our budgets. Thank you, Rich. There's something else. We had something else we were talking about. Was that it? I don't remember. Okay.
Well, the stop line, the pink
Yeah,
stop
we're
line,
not,
that's
yeah,
it.
we'll talk about that next month. Okay. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Also, just a thank you to the mayor, the board, and the staff for the flowers for my dad. It was very much appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So welcome.
All right, administrators report. And you guys can leave if you want to leave, the two of you. You're dismissed.
The girls.
They're dismissed too, unless you really want to stay.
Okay, so election results,
Can you
and
just
all
start?
of our trustees obviously
Can you just
won.
I'd like to thank everybody who came out to vote.
Yes, we did have
Thank you for
73 people came to vote.
I'd like to
Really
thank
great number for
I'd like to thank former Mayor Harrington for opening the polls earlier, which we're continuing to do.
You know what, should have demanded recount, because I think they.
We didn't have a lot of people vote, but we had enough people vote that it makes sense to still keep our polls open early.
And I bet I know who it was.
Software update?
Yeah, right?
I'm sorry, okay, software update, all right, we're really cooking here. We had our last municipal, we're having our last municipal meeting tomorrow. After that, we're going to go for full staff training, and then we should go live on May 1st. The Laserfish is up and running, but we have to get it synced with the municipal. They're working on that right now. And our new financial software, they are currently converting all the data from KBS into the Edmund system. And we aim to go live on that in September. If, we want to get through the tax season and then have a period of training and problem solving before we go.
And I'm
live
really
on that.
hoping that the new accounting software will make the budgeting process a lot
Oh,
easier.
it will.
So instead of me manually doing these reports, it is
It'll
the
do it
intention
for
and
you.
belief that the system will have all those reports automated. We can customize them to do what we want to do, so we can have a better, grasp on our finances on a month-to-month and quarterly basis without having to generate manual reports.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Yep.
Very, very nice looking reports too. This is our 9th year that we became Tree City. That was in 2022. We've got recognition. And that being said, I would ask for the board to pass our annual Arbor Day proclamation. Arbor Day this year comes out on Friday, April 21st. As far as our village tree giveaway, the trees have been ordered, the saplings, we're waiting delivery. And once we get them, we'll decide on what day we're going to do the giveaway. So, could somebody please offer the motion to declare April 21st Arbor Day in Flower Hill?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second?
Gary said already.
Okay, trustee Lewandowski, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we got our, agreement from D&D for the 2023 stormwater report preparation. In the packet, note that we only do task 1, which is up this year by $200. A couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago, we went out to bid on this service, and D&D did come in at the best price.
That is a good number.
And they've always done excellent work for us. So I'd like somebody to please offer a motion to accept the contract.
I'll make the
And then
motion.
where's the mayor to sign? Okay. We have the mayor and trustee Frankel. All in favor?
Aye. Also, I got, just as a point of reference, I got stuff from Eric Swenson to give.
They have it too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they're so thorough.
Good, great.
Yeah, they're fabulous. Yeah, thank you very much, though. Next is BCA.
Yes, there was one matter that went to decision before BZA last month. You heard Mr. Albinski talk about 85 Drake, which also went for the Architectural Review Committee. The variance was to request a 4-foot fence in the front yard. It's a corner property, and they were proposing to include a fence on Chanticleer Drive, which, if you were to look at the house, this would be their technical front yard, but it wouldn't appear to be their front yard in the manner that the house is facing. They were actually before the board twice. The first time the board wanted to make sure that if the fence was going to remain, it would be appropriately screened. The applicant came back the next time and it included additional shrubs and things so that really the fence just won't be visible.
And it's an estate fence to begin with, correct?
It is.
So it's a beautiful fence to begin with, right?
And the board approved it.
Okay, thank you very much. Next month, we have a very, very heavy BCA calendar. I think it's a reflection on the increase in building in the village, so it's all good stuff.
Well, let's hope it continues.
Yes.
We need those
All
fees.
good.
Yes. All right.
Mayor's report.
Mayor's report, bunch of items. Number 1, fee schedule. I don't have it ready to give you today, but we do need to, I've been working closely with Peter based on some of the villages he serves and other villages and the way they do their fees to propose to the board to revise our fees to adequately reflect the costs of the village to provide these services. Additionally, we might be able to change some of our fees to make them easier to understand. Instead of now we have some formulas, I think the thing that Peter has proposed to me, which we'll do a little more analysis on, is to make it simpler for residents to file for building permits. And no one's sitting here doing math and possibly making a mistake and there's misconceptions. It'll be pretty straightforward and I think easier for people to understand. And we'll bring in some more revenue to reflect the increased costs we have of running this village. I attended the Long Island Water Conference Legislative Forum. All the water districts were there really to promote drinking water safety, which is pretty important to our village, especially in light of what potentially Governor Hochul wants to do with all this additional housing. And that'll be terrible for our water source. NCVOA, attended last month's meeting, is very informative. Next month's meeting will be good as well. We're going to have Police Commissioner Ryder there, so it's a good
And the
attendance.
chef from Chop.
And a new venue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
temporary,
great.
temporary
Yeah.
venue. I attended the Police Commissioners Council again this month. It was how to protect against fraud. I will be posting every week a new tip. They sent us 4 new tips. There has been some pretty bad elder fraud in the neighborhood. Someone I know got taken for a lot of money from a Microsoft gift card scam. So let's keep an eye on our vulnerable people, and if anyone has a IT question who calls you, one of your loved ones, immediately tell them not to do whatever they think they're trying to do, because it's most of it's nefarious things out there. It's terrible what these people do and take advantage of everybody. Thank you, Suzanne. Our New York State Controller fiscal stress score came in, and once again, we have no designation. So thank you for doing a great job with the finances. Gary, guess what April 15th is going to be?
Tax day.
No, that's the 18th.
17th.
Is it? That's the 18th. Is it the 18th?
17.
17th. Well, I'll pay it on the 18th. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is doing the Septic Smart event again.
Oh, right.
But this is
Your
not
favorite
just for elected officials. This is for the whole community. So I'll post that on our Facebook page in the next couple of days, and I'll notify the residents. So anybody who's interested in one of these green septic systems, this was a great event. They had all the vendors there. They had the equipment. They answered all the questions.
It's not in the middle of the hot July.
Sounds like fun.
No, the last time we went, it was terrible. It was one of those, it was like 100 degrees on an
That
asphalt
sounds like
field.
fun.
No, Frank, you know what it is? It's very informative and fun. It's very informative.
Get like cesspools.
Yeah, nothing.
Listen, green is good.
That would be good, because they, I gotta upgrade my system.
All right, anybody trustees reports, like on the Hempstead Harbor, Manhasset Bay, anything like that? Okay. Old business.
Port Washington Fire.
So we had the presentation by our friends at Port Washington Fire last month. We had some questions and concerns. Thank you, Jeff, for reaching out to the fire department. They changed the contract based on some input from us. They also changed the contract with some input from another village. And I think that makes it a better contract for all parties involved. So that being said, I'd like to make Jeff's going to say something first.
The only thing I wanted to mention, that the additional changes were suggested by Baxter, states they were pretty minor, really semantic changes, didn't change the tone. The essential part was that the village was concerned about whether or not co-pays would be something that the village would have to incur on behalf of residents. And what they changed in the contract is to say that the department has elected to not charge patients that are residents of the village a co-payment that may be required by an insurance program or other reimbursement source. It goes on to say that the village agrees that the payment of such co-payment would be the responsibility of village residents, but there won't be one. The reason that the additional language had to be there is because of the determination of the Inspector General. I spoke with the attorney for the department about it, that they essentially made the change that this village wanted, and the changes from Baxter Estates, as I mentioned, were pretty much minor.
Which is good, because now this doesn't put the village on the hook for expenses that we possibly shouldn't be on the hook for. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Port Washington Fire, for changing. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement, approve the contract.
I'd also ask that that be to approve the contract and authorize the mayor to execute on behalf of.
Yes.
Okay, do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
Right, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We did the tree permit already?
Yep, the tree.
Did the tree permit, fire department.
We did the tree permit,
So we did-
local law H.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
It seems that people can't finish a house.
You can, it's, 12
Yeah,
months is
yeah,
ridiculous.
it's not anymore.
It really is ridiculous.
Right.
The houses are getting so, complex, and it takes, and supply chain, it's,
So currently it's 1 year.
yeah, 18
So
months is fair.
Peter made a very valid point.
Yeah.
It just, everybody has to apply for an extension. It's really hard to get it done in a year.
Yeah.
Now, we want to carefully balance the needs of people who live nearby, who then have to deal with 18 months of construction. But the reality is,
It's gonna be anyway.
they would get it anyway.
Right,
So
exactly.
it makes sense. Maybe we'll bring in a couple of, actually, I think our first extension, we don't bring in too much on the first extension, do we?
No, it's 25% of the
Right.
original.
It just saves people some money
It's good
too.
for 6 months. But, it's kind of like, I feel like it's so punitive, the extensions.
Well, the reason they were done in the past, I remember from previous boards, there were people doing construction that
never
refused to
getting done.
finish their projects,
Right.
and it was just there for years.
Right, but in the case of these new homes, it's not like they're dilly-dallying, it's how long it takes to build a house.
Right.
Yeah, you're
So
not-
that's why we're suggesting to change our law. Was there a question?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I think we require that after 2 years, they would need to resubmit for a brand new permit, correct?
That's what's in the code, but
So
I've also,
basically, all we're eliminating is
1 year.
the 1 year requirement for an extension. So this would be 18 months.
Mhm.
And then at that point, they'd have to file for an extension that goes to 2
right,
years.
for another,
And then if
6
they're not
months.
done at 2 years, then they still would need to file at this point for a
Right.
brand new permit.
Right, I wouldn't push the 2 year out until we see how the 18 months.
No, I don't want to push it. I don't think it's
Yeah, I
fair
don't
to
think
the
we've
next two
had
projects.
anybody come for an extension after 2 years.
The
since
only one
before
was
COVID.
the house on Crabapple was the last one, I think, right?
There
Right.
was, no,
right,
and then
that was like
Elder
a
Woods.
5-year house.
Yeah.
Oh,
Elder
right,
Woods.
yeah.
Those are the only two I've had to deal with.
Yeah,
in my time
only
with
two
the
I
board.
can
So that's, I
remember.
just want to make sure,
No,
I think that is.
that needs to be
still a
written in
good
stone,
shout.
because it's not fair to live next to a project that long. It's just terrible. Terrible.
Okay, so, can I have a motion to, introduce that law?
I'll make the motion.
Let's go through
Do I hear a
this.
second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
By the way, Dean doesn't fucking need
Okay, what are we doing about 5 Millwood with the trees?
Okay, so 5 Knollwood. I apologize, I didn't send everybody pictures of this. There is a tree on 5 Knollwood on a property that the homeowner is not paying attention to his tree, and he's not paying attention to the work that he's doing on his house. That being said, there is a tree in front of his home that, after speaking with our very wise village arborist, we decided that part of the tree needs to be trimmed that goes over the street. We're not asking for the entire limb to come down because that will make the tree off balance. It's still a healthy tree. We just were there a couple of days ago and everything's starting to bloom. But there's a portion of the tree, and that would be from that forward, that we're asking to be removed. This from the tree that's going over the street. I'm trying to authorize the board to take action because since the homeowner is a little bit of an absentee homeowner, if we don't get the Max isn't.
They're working at night too.
Yeah, but we can't, they're,
I know, they're inside.
right,
They'll be there at 10 o'clock at night starting work.
we'll try to catch them if we can.
But they've already been, issued summonses.
They can't work inside.
They start opening.
But here's the thing, I don't want to
See if
wait.
you walk around.
I don't want to wait to notify the homeowner and wait for another board meeting and another board meeting, so I'd like to
All right, we have the
give them
resolution.
their notification like now, that they must cut the tree back in X amount of days or weeks. And if not, I want to authorize our highway department to hire a tree company to trim back the tree per the plan by the village arborist and bill the homeowner back. Sounds right, Jeff? Excellent. So I will make that motion. If someone wants to second it.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I prepared a draft notice that could be used in conjunction with that resolution for that village administrator.
Perfect.
And it's the timeframe that I suggest would be 14 days from the date of the letter.
That's very reasonable because that'll get us right before the next board meeting. And yeah, I don't want to wait too long. It needs to be addressed.
I just want to make a comment, too bad they're not here, but there was an issue on Crabapple and Boulder where the homeowners' bushes were in the, when you went to that intersection, was pointed out that they were blocking there's no stop sign the other way. It was very dangerous. You had to pull halfway out to the street before you could make your left if that's what you were desiring to do. So I will say that Rich right on it and our new code enforcer within the next day, those trees, or a day or two, those trees
Yeah,
come down.
so
We gotta do that in Sunnyvale again.
So-
Sunnyvale and
So
Cherry.
let me address that in a second. So Rich sent the crew out, they trimmed back as
Right.
much as they could. And at the same time, Jack spoke to the homeowner and it was the 1-2 punch. So yeah, we did some, but it wasn't,
But I think
We
the
could
way
take
that
it
it
all
was
down.
done is my point, it worked,
Yes.
the way it's supposed to work, so.
I think our new
So
code
kudos
enforcement is a
to-
lot more aggressive with this. So with Sunnyvale, just reach out to Jack.
Yeah, it's the same situation.
Let him know.
Or let
Well,
Richard Summers.
yeah, I don't think it's a Jack thing because they've always been okay with it. It's just, we gotta remind them it's time to,
That's what we
the
do.
stop sign just
So Jack,
disappeared.
Jack doesn't give violations right away.
Yeah,
He addresses the homeowner,
I know.
has a nice conversation with them if they don't comply within a certain amount of time, but Jack usually deals with this. So have Jack talk to the homeowner. If they don't do it either, we'll have the highway
Yeah.
department do it, or we'll issue a violation or do what we need to do to make corners. Same with any other corners. If there's any other corners that's not safe, let us know and we'll address them.
September meeting date.
Good.
September meeting, oh, what's?
We
the-
need to change it to the following week because the mayor is very busy and will not be able to make the September meeting.
And it's Labor Day.
It's right after Labor Day.
The
Yeah.
Labor Day is so we were supposed to meet on the 5th, right?
Right.
So the 11th?
Correct.
September 11th, not a good day to meet.
September 11th?
We're gonna look at doing,
Well,
we'll have a moment of silence.
Yeah, I think we could meet on the 11th.
September
So
11th.
I'd like to make a motion to move the
Hold
meeting
on,
to
I'm
the
on the
11th.
11th, I'll be on the
Can we have Steve Leventhal?
I can seek to arrange a partner to be here, yes.
All right, we'll take Mr. Leventhal.
My friend's
Or-
birthday, so
or
he got the
another-
day for his birthday.
Another person from your firm. I'll make the motion. Anyone second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Okay, and then we have two requests for a waiver of park use fees. First from the Katie Arco Run, which will be on June 11th. And then from the Women's Club for Easter egg hunt on this Thursday, the 6th.
So in the case
The
of.
6th is Saturday, isn't it?
No, it's Thursday.
It's Thursday.
It is?
Today's the,
Oh, yeah.
today's the
Everybody's
3rd.
coming on Thursday.
So in the case
Yeah.
of the Katie Acco Memorial Run, they've done it multiple years. They've done a great job. They've been excellent stewards of the park, so we've waived the park use fee. And this is a new event from the Women's Club of Flower Hill. So again, we'll waive the fee. Both organizations have the proper insurance to use the park. We'll provide the garbage cans. Everyone will do a good job cleaning them up. I'd like to thank the Women's Club for putting the pinwheels out on the traffic islands in, I guess, honor of Kira's Champions, which is protecting children from abuse.
Can we have them hide some matzo too?
On the 6th? I don't know.
I guess if you reserve pass up here, Easter eggs.
If you supply the matzah.
It's on the Afikomen.
Trust me, you can have all the matzo that I have.
Is there anything else from the board?
No, I'll abstain from the women's club.
Oh, yes. So I'll make a motion to vote to approve both of these events.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Noted that Mr. Harrington will recuse himself from the Women's Club. Next public meeting is Monday, May 1st, where we'll continue the Elder Fields Preserve conversation amongst other many great exciting things. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance at this meeting.
Well, how about a motion to close? Anybody make a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close.
Okay, okay.
Aye.
Brandon, does that have this NICOM thing?